Yes, get ready for the legal dictation containing 480 words at the speed of 80 words per minute. The dictation will fluctuate between the speed of 75 to 90 words per minute. Let's start. 3 seconds. Start. The Constitution of India is a document containing the framework of the political system, the duties, rights, limitations, and structure of the government that this nation ought to follow. It also spells out the rights and duties of the Indian citizens. Nobody in India, not even the Prime Minister or the President, has the power to do anything that violates the constitutional rule. Every year on 26 January, we celebrate Republic Day. It was on this day in 1950 that the Constitution of India became effective. Although Dr. Ambedkar is known for his prominent role in drafting the Constitution, it was the fruit of the hard work of 299 people. The Indian Constitution is the lengthiest constitution in the world. It has 448 castes and religions, and with so many states that people who drafted the constitution had to focus on the minutest of detail. Besides, the constitution has been amended many times and new rules and laws have been added. As a result, the Constitution of India became the lengthiest constitution in the world. The beautiful thing about our constitution is it can be modified if a political party has a supermajority, and yet it is not easily modifiable. The Supreme Court has ruled that no provision of the Constitution can be with the aim to destroy that provision. At the same time, nobody has the right to the basic structure of the Constitution. As a result, on one hand, our Constitution remains updated, and on the other, no particular political party with evil intentions can deface it to establish a monopoly. Unlike the British Constitution, our Constitution is completely written with no ambiguity. It focuses on the minutest aspects of the political, executive, and legal systems of the country, and it also focuses on the fundamental rights and duties of the citizens of India. The Indian Constitution prescribes that India should have dual governance, the center and the regional states. It also ruled that the country must have the three pillars of democracy: legislative system, executive system, and the judiciary. Hence, the Indian Constitution supports a federal structure. However, the Constitution has also given some extra power to the center. The center has the power to preside over matters that concern both the center as well as the states. It has the power to announce an emergency. It can modify the constitution, and the states has no power to oppose that modification. Hence, the Constitution has unitary feature too. The Constitution of India was created by the Indians. There is no foreign hand whatsoever. The due democratic process was followed in the form of debates before enforcing the Constitution. And last but not the least, it stands to protect the fundamental rights of every Indian. The preamble to the Constitution is the soul of it. The preamble says that India is a sovereign country. Stop. Now get ready for the general matter dictation containing 480 words at the same speed with fluctuation. Start. Mr. Chairman, I rise to support this resolution because this matter has to be considered and reconsidered as planning goes on. Right at the beginning, I must say that this village industry, despite all brave talk on the part of the Planning Commission and the government, has been given a black sheet by the Planning Commission, and I think a lot has to be done in order to reorientate the entire approach with regard to village industries. I generally agree with much of what has been said by the two speakers who have preceded me, and I should like to add a few suggestions to what they have said. Now, even when we were fighting the British, one of the indictments against the British rule was that it led to the ruination of our village and cottage industries. This criticism was absolutely justified, and the meaning of it was not fully seen at that time, perhaps as it is seen today after independence. We have embarked on a policy of industrialization of the country, but in an underdeveloped economy like this, where we have got nearly 82% or a little more of the population living in the villages, you cannot have rapid industrialization merely by starting heavy industries or even medium industries in the urban areas and towns, whether they be in the public sector or in the private sector. They are, of course, important, and the development of such industries must be on a far bigger scale. That is what we stand for, but at the same time, we must embark on a policy of industrialization of the rural areas today. There was a time when capitalist economists almost took it for granted that with the development of capitalism,